Listen to me. If there was a wise man who would ever think of this, they would say in order to be superior to the man, you've got to be the man. For I am the man himself.
My bad. Let's play the proper intro. It's very, very fitting for this review here. But yes, guys, what is going on? How you guys all doing tonight? This is the Club of the Man 1993. This is episode number 25 of my WWE 24 review series. And tonight, we're going to talk about the one on R-Truth as he journeys back home to Charlotte, North Carolina, and we sees where he started from and what he eventually would become. Of course, I then had to do my little R-Truth impersonation there of accidentally going to the wrong slide first, forgetting to turn the audio on, then going, my bad, because this one actually had probably my favorite and most fitting endings to a 24 episode, which we'll talk about that, of course, briefly when we get to the end of this episode. But when I watched this one last night, I had only seen this one time. And watching it a second time, I thought it was pretty good. I definitely would say this is one of the more underrated episodes of 24. It was a very good episode with an inspiring story from people who definitely went down like a dark path that Ron Killings did to become the success that he is. Now, R-Truth for sure, he's never going to be a world champion. But he's definitely a Hall of Famer. He is a hidden treasure. And I see very great things for him, for sure. And he's still in his mid-50s. And he's still just awesome in general. But let's learn about how Ron Killings became the Truth. And, you know, what he went through and whatnot. So he grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina. Most of the episode, when we're not seeing clips, we were seeing him driving his car through his hood. And he grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina. He was, of course, into, like, you know, weightlifting and whatnot. He actually said he used to lift bricks in his front yard. And he was a pretty good football player in high school. I think he was a running back, from what I believe it was. And there was a lot of belief that he was going to go to college to play football. But he even said that he knew football wasn't quite what he wanted to do. His thing was music. He wanted to make music, produce videos for his music videos, and just performances, do all that. But he also knew that sometimes when you're trying to start something, you gotta spend money to start something. And unfortunately for Mr. Killings, it was not a good path, because he would go on to start selling drugs to make the money he needed to book his performances, get his costumes, and everything else for his music that he was trying to really get off the ground. And unfortunately, he eventually did pay the price and spend some time in jail. While he was in jail, though, he met a guy by the name of Jack Crockett, who basically helped him find his true path in life. After they got out of jail, I believe he mentioned, you know, you like the rap, you like the dance, maybe you should consider professional wrestling. And I believe he took him to a WCW show. And just kind of like mentioned all of that intertwining, saying, that can be you. He actually was comparing him to Ric Flair during a Ric Flair entrance in WCW, saying that, you see this reaction? That could be you someday. And that's where it kind of clicked for Truth. as to seeing what he could do. So he would train. He was it was a little hard at first though when there was Memphis Championship Wrestling developmental going back and forth, as he had kids at the time too, from Charlotte to Memphis, the 10-hour drives. It was getting kind of rough. Eventually though, I believe he made it to the main roster, which at the time he was not R-Truth. I think he was either K-Kwik or K-Krush. He's definitely were both those names at one point. But I believe he got to the main roster because Road Dogg heard him rapping one time, and he said, "That's who I want my tag team partner to be." So R-Truth and Road Dogg were actually a tag team. I never knew that. Until Road Dogg got fired in 2000, and Truth stuck around till about 2001, and then he got fired, which was very discouraging for him, but he still took his ball and kept going. I know there was a part in the documentary where he showed his back cave, as he called it, not his man cave, his back cave, and where he, makes his music and whatnot. He sung and rapped a little bit for us, which I thought was also, pretty cool as well. He's actually, some of his songs were kind of catchy. I might have to look them up and download some of them. Like Power, I know, is one of them. I can't remember what the other one was he sung in this one. But they were pretty catchy. I liked them. He would, though, go on to make a name for himself in NWA. And then also he went to TNA as well. I feel like TNA was really where he made a splash. And for most of both those runs, he was a heel. We forget R-Truth, has been a babyface most of his career. But like 2011 was probably, well, he has had some good spurts here and there. But I still say his best run was definitely 2011 in WWE when he was a heel. With The Miz and the Awesome Truth and the whole Little Jimmy stuff. We'll get to that in just a second. But like, I saw like how dangerous he was as a heel, like from his NWA and TNA highlights. He was really good. He like dissed on WWE in it. And then I think it's when he went to TNA, he became known as Ron the Truth Killings. Because he would be saying, "And that's the truth." And all this and that. He even dissed that his old names like K-Kwik and K-Krush were gone. Now he goes by The Truth. And of course, not until 2011 when it was The Truth has set me free. As that was literally all his theme song was. Of course, until he teamed up with The Miz. But I believe while he was in TNA, he did win the NWA World title, which was pretty cool. And then I think it was 2009, I believe it was, where Umaga, which is Truth said, rest his soul, had reached out to him saying that WWE's hot, they're talking, why don't you give them a call? And, obviously, he wasn't happy with how it ended the first time, but he took his advice, he gave him a call, he signed a contract. And that's when he became R-Truth. They did show over, like, some highlights. Actually, also, I forgot to mention, too. They did have Jack Crockett, the guy who Truth met in jail, that kind of, like, geared him toward wrestling. They did show him being interviewed. And Truth coming up to him from behind. And it looked like, because they said that they kind of went their separate ways for a while. But I think that was the first time in a long time they had seen each other. So that was a nice little reunion to see with each other. And, but they started showing some of his early WWE highlights. They dove into 2011 run when R-Truth had turned heel. He mentioned that the whole Little Jimmy thing. Little Jimmy was supposed to be what he called John Cena. But instead, it became something like his imaginary friend. And Little Jimmy just, like, got so over. Like, he would even have autograph sessions where he'd have a chair sitting there for Little Jimmy, and he'd say, "Go give Little Jimmy a high five." And he'd give him a high five. The fan would give Little Jimmy a high five and whatnot. Again, that heel run in 2011. If there was ever a time to put the world title on R-Truth, it would have definitely been in 2011. Of course, they didn't. I still believe the only one-on-one world title match he ever got was at Capital Punishment in 2011 against John Cena. And of course, he lost. And then we all know where we go from there. He would team up with The Miz and be Awesome Truth, kind of being like the anti-authority figures and whatnot. Now, we all know that there was, and I still say too, they were so hot. Truth was so over at this time that they didn't talk about this in the documentary, of course, but originally in that tag match with the Awesome Truth versus John Cena and The Rock at Survivor Series, originally Awesome Truth was supposed to go over. They were supposed to go over, and then they were supposed to go on to win the tag titles. But then, unfortunately, Truth got in trouble, and he got suspended for 30 days for violating the wellness policy. So they lost at Survivor Series. Then the next night on Raw, Miz turned on Truth. Truth went away for a month, came back as a babyface. Which, okay, yes, he was hot at the time, but still, it's like he had to keep that unhinged mojo on him. And it was, again, I wasn't watching back then, but I've watched tons of highlights of that 2011 Truth run. It was definitely some of the best stuff I've personally seen. And honestly, like what we got today. So they did talk about kind of what we got today about Truth just being himself, being a big, fun, happy guy, big goofball, confused at times. Like when he did that spot in the One Royal Rumble where he came out and pulled out the ladder, thinking he was climbing to win the Money in the Bank contract. He pitched that to Vince. And of course, Vince thought that was hilarious, so he let him do it, of course. But it's funny because when I first started watching, R-Truth was just a cool guy who rapped. And then when he kind of got this more confused personality, I hated it at first. I absolutely hated R-Truth, I would say, from 2015 until he moved over to SmackDown in 2017. I think the first time I really saw how funny Truth was when he had that storyline with Carmella. He kept saying, "I'm going to pin Carmella. I'm going to pin Carmella for the women's title." And then they're off camera, and you hear Carmella go, "Oh, Truth, put me down." And he just goes, "That's what's up." But the rest of the documentary, they more so just highlight over how many times Truth has made people laugh. They showed how him and Carmella became a duo, their dance breaks, which I thought was also a very fun spot for Carmella to be in at the time, because she had just gotten done through the heel run, and her being a fun dancing babyface, it kind of showed that when booked right, Carmella could have played both roles very well. She could have been a fun dancing popular face, but also could have been a mean sex appeal type heel as well. I thought you could have done as well with her too. But yeah, all that stuff. I do love also, they did include the segment with him, Brock Lesnar, and Paul Heyman. Remember, R-Truth got Brock Lesnar to break character. So much so that I know he would have been squashed. I wouldn't mind seeing an R-Truth and Brock Lesnar match. That, honestly, I think would have been worked for a world title match at the time because of, how over that segment got. And, of course, they also talked about the whole 24/7 title with, the goofy nonsense. And, yes, it was very PG. But, honestly, if there was anyone at the time who was going to be able to make that work, at least try to get something out of it, it was definitely Truth. He was definitely the one to make it as fun as possible, and he did. But again, it just was just a pointless title. What was nice though was at the very end of the documentary, it shows him pulling up his car. As I said, most of the documentary he was driving through the streets. He pulled up to his childhood home, this tiny little home that right in the front yard he used to lift bricks, and he comes out to check it out. And there's a little kid who lives there. And his father came out too. And, Truth just talked to them how, this was his house, this is where he lived. They seemed to have known who he was. And, he was welcomed warmly. It was very nice to see. And then he even let the kid hold his 24/7 championship. Such a nice, touching way, of course, to end it. Like I said before, R-Truth is never going to be a world champion. Unfortunately. But I feel like he found his role in WWE as an entertainer. And I think with the work he's performed, he definitely is a Hall of Famer. And I think he well so earned it. I will throw this out there, though. And I might post a poll on Twitter and Instagram maybe about this later. Excuse me. But even though he probably is in his niche with the character he has now and how hilarious he is, especially after seeing, again, like, his highlights in NWA and TNA and even his 2011 run again, do you think they should give him one more heel run? I kind of want it now. Especially seeing how scary and vicious he can get. I feel like if he did flip that switch, he could pull it off still in his career. The guy can still move. He can still talk. He is still funny as hell. But I really think if you gave him the chance, he could dive back into that serious, unhinged, emotional character that he had in 2011. So I would say yes. Why not give him one more shot as a heel? Again, I don't think you would put the world title on him, but it would still be something different. Again, I'm going to throw it out there with a tweet and polls and whatnot. But I want to see what you guys say. But yeah, and then of course, the ending. After recapping everything that was talked about and where Truth had come from being a kid who ditched football for music, was desperate for money and sold drugs, went to jail, and then would be steered into the direction of professional wrestling, got fired from WWE, and still came back successful. I'm just saying, it was quite a story. And then the ending, R-Truth is on some type of like bridge looking out into a pond as the camera is fading back. And then all of a sudden, as soon as like the actual music fades out, you hear the raw ambient sound. You're like, uh-oh, is that supposed to happen? And then the freaking drone backed into a tree and got stuck in a tree and just shuts off. And you hear Truth go, oh, my bad. It was a very, very fitting end to a documentary on R-Truth. But I enjoyed it. I thought Truth had a really good story to share, and it was very well documented for sure. And like I said, he's a national treasure, for sure a Hall of Famer someday. And again, what are you guys' thoughts on him being a heel one more time? Do you think it should happen? Leave your guys' thoughts down in the comments section below. Also, your thoughts on this documentary as well. Again, that was number 25. We got through 25 out of 37 of these so far. And several of the ones coming up I haven't seen yet. I believe the next one actually is a big one. It's actually probably either the longest or one of the longest documentaries at like an hour and 15 minutes, and that's on Edge. W24's Edge, The Second Mountain. A documentary that was originally supposed to be about Edge's life after wrestling, but of course during the production, that's when Edge made his return to the ring. So that's going to be a very interesting watch. I have seen that one before. It's been a while, but I'm looking forward to watching that one again next. And then, of course, some others come up that I haven't seen for a while, or haven't seen at all, like the Keith Lee and the Big E ones. I haven't seen those. Those are coming up, though, so I'm looking forward to those. But yeah, we are getting closer and closer to the end for this 24 review series. And like I said, this right here, this R-Truth one, I thought it was a very underrated documentary. If you haven't watched it yet, I definitely highly recommend going out and watching it. So what are you guys' thoughts on this R-Truth 24 special? Leave your guys' thoughts down in the comments section below. Again, mention if you think R-Truth should have a heel run one last time before he retires in WWE. Slap a like on the video and subscribe for more content on my channel. Follow me on Twitter as well, The Club of the Man 93. Also follow me on Instagram at The Club of the Man 1993. And until then, guys, I'll check it out. I'll catch you guys all later. Again, the next one is Edge, The Second Mountain, where we look back at Edge's journey to getting back into the ring in 2020. So until then, guys, I'm checking out. I'll catch y'all later. Have a great rest of your night. Do not forget also, in order to be superior to the man, you've got to be the man. And for I am the man. My bad. Himself. And that is not just the pain, my friends. That is a fact of life. No! I mean, yeah! My bad.